Well, thank you so much, and good evening, Bay Area journalists. As you know, my name is Dedrick Russell, and I am running for Vice President of Broadcast. And as you've heard, that I did get my job through NABJ's job fair back in 2003. So that shows you that I am a witness that NABJ works, and I believe that it still can work in 2009 and beyond. Now, we're dealing with some tough times, and all of us, we know someone who is dealing with job cuts, job layoffs, job buyouts, and job freezes. But I believe that our organization can rise above this madness. But I believe that in order for that to happen, we have to do three things. We have to be better, wiser, and strategic. I believe that this is the time that, NABJ, we must do a better job in strengthening our local chapters. This is the time that we must bring all black journalists together in every market, in every community, so that we can begin to put our heads together to find ways to bring back jobs and keep jobs and continue to point out the wrongs when it comes to the way local companies are treating black journalists. In other words, this is no time for weak chapters, and I believe that NABJ can do a better job in strengthening our local chapters. We also must be wiser when it comes to handling our business. We must be relevant, cutting edge. We have to offer accessible, affordable, and appropriate and more regional workshops so our members can remain marketable in the workplace. I was at the Region 1 conference in New York, and it was very informative, and it was very nice, and it would have been nicer if we could have, streamlined that information on the internet so others could have benefited from that good information that was shared to us in Region 1. And also, we must be strategic when it comes to getting our message out. I believe that this is the time that we have to make some noise about how black journalists are taking a hit. We have to take our message to the streets, to the consumers, so they'll know that they don't have to support news agencies that don't support black journalists. There's no doubt about it. The media industry is under attack. This is not the time to retreat, but it's time to fight back and seize this moment in history.
Thank you.
Some may believe. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's good to be here, and thank you for having this forum be so open, and thanks to those who are visiting remotely. I'm running for Vice President of Broadcast because one of my passions is, my main passion with regard to NABJ is to help black journalists, NABJ members, help themselves. And I've been doing that throughout my entire professional life. I do it now as president of the Detroit chapter of NABJ. In fact, there are three examples. With the Detroit chapter, it was almost dead a few years ago, until I, on the behest of others, including the national office, put in the proper reports so that we could keep our chartership, basically. And now, with a core group that I've built in Detroit, it's now thriving once again, and it's really almost up to when it was in its heyday. There's still a lot of rebuilding to do, but we have a good team that's together, and that's the example of the team that I put together. Earlier in my career, when I was with the Washington Association of Black Journalists 14 to 15 years ago, they had a high school journalism workshop. Many of the students in here or new professionals might be familiar with your own high school journalism workshops, either in college or right here in the Bay Area. Well, I introduced the weather component to it when I first started working at WRC, Channel 4 in Washington, D.C. And even after I left Washington, D.C., it was institutionalized, so it was still there for at least a few years after I had gone. And in addition to that, final example is the Digital Journalism Task Force, which I founded a couple of years ago and still chair. In fact, California, I'm happy to be here, has the largest number west of the Mississippi of members within the Digital Journalism Task Force, and Kim Baradakian is one of those examples, shining examples, I must say. But that also goes to the type of knowledge that I have about the business and where it's going. I believe I have the foresight about where our business is going and how that can benefit NABJ in the future, and that's why I'm running for Vice President of Broadcast, and I hope for your vote.
My passion for NABJ really begins with before I became Diversity Director at CBS. When I got that job, that was in 2005, I was recruited to be Diversity Director, and I learned very quickly that there's a lack of diversity in the media. Part of the reason for that is that news directors, when you ask them why they don't have more diversity, they say they can't find qualified people of color. And, to a certain extent, I think that is, I'm not going to call it a bold-faced lie, but I found out the reason why many of them couldn't find these journalists of color is because they were looking from behind their desks. They weren't getting out. Now, one of the, Dedrick mentioned that we need to go to the chapters when they're having problems with different companies. We actually are doing that. I've done that in several different cities. You know, I believe that the journalists that we have in NABJ are some of the finest journalists in the world. Not black journalists, but finest journalists in the world. But many times they don't get a chance to be considered for jobs because these people aren't looking for them. So when I go to different cities, I talk to the news directors and I tell them, you have an opening, you call me and I will give you somebody you can hire. This just happened last week and I was in Los Angeles and I found out that one of the stations they were looking for a reporter, a freelance reporter. I put this information out and now we've got some people who are being considered. That's the first thing on my platform. Number two is we got to make sure we have the training to compete for the jobs in the digital converged newsrooms. And that's where the Media Institute comes in, and we've been doing that for the last several years. Finally, funding. NABJ depends way too much on the media companies to fund us. These are the same companies which are laying us all off. So we have to find different ways to fund the organization. Last week in LA, I had a meeting with a company or an organization that wants to be a funder for us. And that's part of what I want to do for you.